everyone, so I just wanted to give you an update. I'm obviously out of the hospital. I thought I was going to end up back in the hospital, but by the grace of God, I did not. So it was hard to vlog in the hospital. There were a ton of medical staff in and out of my room all day with different testing, taking me to get different ultrasounds done, checking on the baby, checking on my bladder, checking on my uterus, lots of blood work being done, just so many tests being done, urinalysis tests. They were constantly in and out of my room giving me results and doing new tests. I think I had about 8 ultrasounds in the hospital. So basically it all started out as me having trouble urinating, and eventually I couldn't go at all. So obviously that's really scary. This did happen to me one time in my 4th pregnancy where I woke up, and it typically happens in the morning or throughout the night, but I did wake up and I could not urinate for like 2 hours. I called the hospital. They said they've never heard of it, which I had an appointment, a video appointment with a doctor the day before I ended up going in the hospital. And she was going to send me to like a urologist or neurologist for like nerves. She said she's never heard of this in pregnancy, which is kind of crazy because when I went to the emergency room and talked to as many doctors as I did, at one point there were like 6 of them in my room, they said it's rare, but they do see it happen. So it's not unheard of, and for a doctor in the field of OBGYN to have not ever heard of it or heard of this during pregnancy, it's kind of weird to me, but I don't know. She was an older doctor as well, so you would think that she would have heard of it, experienced maybe a patient having this problem, but she did not, and did not take it very seriously. She went over a lot of things. We went over a lot throughout that appointment, and all my like pregnancy histories, all my health issues that I've had during pregnancies, and never took me not being able to urinate seriously. So the next morning I woke up and it got to where I couldn't urinate at all. So at that point I went to the emergency room, and a couple of days ago, so this happened on like a Wednesday, but I had been at the emergency room and I did post that video, and that was on a Sunday. So all of this happened within a week, and I basically became friends and family with all the doctors and nurses there. They knew who I was and we were talking. So basically after all the testing and everything, all the blood work, all the ultrasounds, talking to them about my symptoms, and basically trying to figure out everything that they could do to diagnose my issue, I was diagnosed with an incarcerated uterus. So that is where the uterus is in a certain position where it is blocking the bladder, more like squeezing the bladder, where there's like little to no room for you to get your urine out. So it's not blocking it necessarily, but it kind of is, but it's like squeezing the passageway to where your urine would pass through and let you go to the bathroom. So you guys, I went through the most painful procedure, and it took a very long time. And at this point there were about 7 doctors in my room, and what they did, it took a while, but what they did was they went up there and they basically like lifted my uterus. They went in and pushed my uterus up and away from my bladder to where it wouldn't be squeezing that area, so I was able to urinate again. Again, they said it's rare, and it was very, 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 very painful. And yes, I was awake for the procedure, and it wasn't fun. It took about 3 different doctors. My uterus was being stubborn, so it took about 3 different doctors to finally get my uterus to where it needed to be for me to urinate. They did also, before the procedure, they inserted a catheter. It burned so bad. It was absolutely insane. It burned while they put it in, while it was in. It burned when they pulled it out. That may have been the worst. Usually, well, not usually, I've only had a catheter one time, and that was during one of my labors where I had an epidural. And it's really weird because I only had one catheter, and I've had 5 epidurals out of 6 births, and I only had 1 catheter, but I didn't feel it going in or coming out because I had the epidural. So I felt no pain, and the fact that I was just wide awake, not numb at all. They stuck the catheter in, emptied my bladder, pulled it out, and then they had me on my hands and knees, and they were again lifting my uterus or trying to position it to a point where it was not in the way or squeezing my bladder so I could urinate. Again, my uterus was being stubborn, wasn't moving, and everything just hurt so bad down there. I was already in so much pain from like urine retention, I guess it's called. So my bladder was just overly full this had been going on for about 3 days, and it just gradually got worse, and it was horrible in the middle of the night and mornings. And then that morning that I went in, I couldn't urinate at all, so it was definitely an emergency. I could not go, and when I would go a little bit, it would like trickle out, little to nothing. And they would, when I got to the hospital and I went, they would check after I went, and there would be so much urine still left in my bladder. And they had like a bladder scanner that would check. It's like an ultrasound machine, kind of, but not really. I don't know. It measures the amount of urine in your bladder. So not really an ultrasound, but I did have a ton of ultrasound scans that day and bladder scans. So I had like an in-depth one, like a full first trimester one. And then I had like their little portable machine in and out of my room all day long, checking on my baby, checking on my bladder, positioning my uterus. And even after all those scans, you guys, I told you that I was like amazing at the nub theory, especially around this point in pregnancy. And I cannot, for the life of me, guess the gender of this baby. I see boy, and then I see girl. I thought for sure it was a girl. I saw flat nubs. Then other times I saw stacked and like raised nubs, which would indicate a boy. So this baby just has me going in circles about whether it's a boy or a girl. And I really thought that it was a boy from the start, and everything pointed to it being a boy. And then when I saw like the flat nub, I was like, it's a girl, and I was like shocked. But then I had other scans, and the nub was up like at a 45-degree angle, which would indicate boy, and I saw stacking on the nub, which would indicate a boy. So I'm seeing both. I have no idea. Now I'm super confused as to what the baby is. I would really like to know, but at this point I would have known like with all of my other babies. So I'm kind of thinking that I might hold out and wait until birth. I don't know. I really don't know. I have my next ultrasound October 4th at like 8:30 in the morning. I have to be there for a 9 o'clock appointment. So if I accidentally see something, then it is what it is. At my anatomy scan, if they ask me if I want to know what it is, I might just have them put it in an envelope if I don't accidentally see like boy parts or girl parts. I don't know, you guys. I really don't know. This is my last baby, and it's the tiebreaker baby. I have 3 boys, 3 girls. Girl, girl, boy, girl, boy, boy. So the likelihood of me having 3 boys in a row, probably not, but you never know. Some people have like 4, 5, 6, 7 boys in a row, and same with girls. So you just don't know. Every pregnancy is different. Every person is different. You can't really base your current pregnancy on previous pregnancies, and now I know that for a fact. But to get back on track with the update video, yeah, they finished the procedure, and they finally let me leave the hospital late that night when I was able to empty my bladder without the help of a catheter. And after they had done the procedure, they made sure I had very little in my bladder or nothing before I left, because if not, we would have to go into more, I don't know, more like in-depth procedures. I might have had to have a catheter in for a couple of days. I might have had to stay in the hospital, which I don't know how that would have been possible, because I do have kids at home that need me all day, every day, 24/7, rely on me. I don't have any help. I don't really have anybody. It's just me. I have my 18-year-old who did help me that day, but I never ask her to watch the kids unless it's an emergency. Go ahead. and my 13-year-old finished off watching them for the night while my 18-year-old had to go run some errands and stop by her job. And again, I never asked them to watch the kids, so I was definitely worried that they were worried about me, asking where I'm at, and they were. They're just used to me being there all the time, all day, every day with them. And when I'm not there, I'm wondering what they're doing and if they're okay, which I do trust my older girls, but I still do worry because I don't ask them to watch them very often. So it's not like they're super duper used to watching them, but they do a good job for emergencies, like emergency dentist appointments that I've been to, emergency doctor appointments, now emergency doctor appointments, well, now emergencies during this pregnancy. The first time they were with their dad, the second time their dad was at work and he was there all day and night, so he couldn't watch them, so the older girls had to watch them. And thankfully my 18-year-old was off work that day, because if she wasn't, I'm not sure what I would have done. Again, I have nobody to watch the kids, and my bladder was filling up and I couldn't urinate. So she did have off and she watched them. I'm beyond thankful for that. I'm like so out of breath. Still so out of breath, but not as bad as I was in my previous video that I went to the emergency room, so that's good. But so far, I've only had one instance in the middle of the night where I had trouble urinating, and that's because I fell asleep and I did not set my alarm for every 2 hours. So this is what they told me to do after they did the procedure. And of course, if it happens again where I cannot urinate after I try what they told me to do, then obviously go back to the hospital because it is urgent. Urine retention could be life-threatening if it gets that bad. You know, like if your urine completely fills up your bladder and it ruptures, or you just can't go for a long period of time. It's dangerous. So they told me to set my alarm for every 2 hours, which during the day I don't, because I do go to the bathroom. I drink so much water that I go to the bathroom so much during the day, probably like a couple times every hour, to be honest with you. But during the night is where I have to set the alarm and go every 2 hours. They said set your alarm for every 2 hours. And a couple of times a day, they gave me an exercise to do for like 15 minutes a day, 3 times a day, and see if that helps. They did have someone recently with the same problem, and they did have to do like the catheter for a couple of days. I guess hers was worse than mine. And once they did the procedure, took out the catheter, told her to set her alarm for every 2 hours and do the exercises. This was after the catheter was removed and the procedure was done. She didn't have any problems. So I'm not taking any chances. I'm setting my alarm for every 2 hours at night and doing the exercise. We'll continue doing the exercises like 2 to 3 times a day. They did not give me a paper on that. I looked it up on the internet and it was the same exercise that they told me to do. So you basically get on all fours. I don't know if I told you guys, but they did have me on my hands and knees, like my elbows and my knees. And then they flipped me over. Well, I got on my back and then they did the procedure that way too. So I was all over the place, and they were lifting my uterus. They were pushing my uterus all around, lifting it up, and it hurt. It hurt. It really hurt. They had me on my elbows and my knees for a while, had me rocking back and forth. That's the exercise, is on your hands and knees where your butt's like up in the air and you have to like wiggle, and your uterus will relieve your bladder. It will kind of like fall back into position. So after they did the procedure, that's what they had me do for like 20 minutes. And it was such a relief. I was able to finally go to the restroom and let it all out. So that was, like I said, such a relief. And I can't believe I went through all of that. And this video is so long that it's going to be like a follow-up video on the actual emergency room visit for this issue, for the incarcerated uterus and not being able to urinate, because right now it says it's at 26 minutes, and I know I will edit a lot out because I do ramble a lot, but it's still such a long video that I'm gonna have to make it a separate video. But that is why I was in the emergency room. It was definitely an emergency. Could not urinate, was very scared, was in so much pain. And come to find out, after so much testing was done, that I have an incarcerated uterus. So that is it for the update video, guys. But I'm going to end this video. Thank you all so much for watching. Make sure to give the video a thumbs up and subscribe if you would like to follow along with my journey. And comment down below if you've ever had an incarcerated uterus or any issues like this during pregnancy before, because I have never heard, and I know a lot of people, and I know a lot of people who've been pregnant, they've never had this issue before. So if you've had this issue or know anyone, let me know. And were they able to get through the rest of their pregnancy without any issues, or did they have this like an ongoing issue? I hope it's not for me. It's very scary and I don't like it. So let me know, and I hope to see you all on my next video. Bye, guys.